In a peaceful village in ancient China, there lived a humble farmer named Li. He was a man of simple means, with a small piece of land that he cultivated with his only son. Together, they worked hard to provide for themselves, growing crops and raising livestock. Life was steady, if not perfect. One day, something unexpected happened that would set off a chain of events the farmer could never have predicted. Li's family owned a beautiful horse, their most valuable possession. This horse wasn't just an animal, it was essential for plowing their fields and helping them transport goods to the market. One morning, the horse broke free from the stable and ran away into the hills. The news of the lost horse quickly spread through the village. The neighbors came to offer their condolences. "What terrible luck," they said. "Losing your horse is such a tragedy." But the farmer simply smiled and responded, "Maybe so, maybe not. We'll see." His calm response surprised the villagers. They couldn't understand how he wasn't devastated by the loss of his most prized possession. A few days later, something miraculous happened. The farmer's horse returned on its own, but it wasn't alone. It had brought back a wild horse, just as strong and beautiful as itself. The villagers couldn't believe their eyes. Now, instead of one horse, Li had two. Once again, the neighbors came rushing over. "What incredible fortune! Now you have two horses instead of one. You must be so happy," they exclaimed. But once again, the farmer smiled and said, "Maybe so, maybe not. We'll see." The villagers were puzzled. How could this man be so indifferent to both good and bad fortune? To them, this was clearly a blessing, yet the farmer remained calm. With two horses, Li's farm work became much easier. His son decided to tame the wild horse, hoping to train it to plow the fields like their old horse. But during the process, disaster struck. The wild horse, not used to being handled, bucked and threw Li's son off its back. The young man fell to the ground, breaking his leg. The villagers once again came to the farmer, shaking their heads in sympathy. "This is terrible news. Your son has broken his leg. Now he won't be able to help with the farm work. What bad luck." But once again, the farmer simply smiled and said, "Maybe so, maybe not. We'll see." The villagers couldn't understand how the farmer stayed so calm, even as his son lay injured and unable to work. A few weeks later, the village received alarming news. The emperor's army was coming through the area, drafting all the able-bodied young men to fight in a war that had broken out in a distant province. The village was thrown into panic, as many of the families feared for the safety of their sons. When the soldiers arrived, they took all the young men from the village, except for one, Li's son, who was spared because of his broken leg. The villagers came to the farmer once again, this time with a mix of envy and relief. "You are so lucky. Because of his injury, your son doesn't have to go to war. He is safe at home while our sons must leave." But as always, the farmer smiled and said, "Maybe so, maybe not. We'll see." In time, the war ended, and many of the young men from the village never returned. Those who did come back were forever changed by the horrors they had experienced. Meanwhile, Li's son had healed from his injury, and life on the farm returned to normal. The villagers, reflecting on all that had happened, began to understand the wisdom of the farmer's words. Life was unpredictable, full of ups and downs. What seemed like a disaster one day could turn out to be a blessing the next, and vice versa. The farmer had taught them the value of patience and perspective, of not getting too attached to outcomes, whether good or bad. As the farmer always said, "Maybe so, maybe not. We'll see." Conclusion. The moral of the story. This old Chinese tale teaches us a powerful lesson. Life is full of unpredictable events, both good and bad, but our reactions to these events determine how we experience them. Sometimes, what we perceive as misfortune can turn into a blessing, and what we see as a blessing may come with unexpected challenges. The key is to remain calm, patient, and open to whatever life brings, understanding that time often reveals the true nature of events. Instead of rushing to judge situations, remember that everything is part of a larger, unfolding story. So, next time something happens that you didn't expect, take a moment and ask yourself, "Maybe so, maybe not. We'll see."